president in January 2017, a manager at a bank branch in Cairo, Egypt, received an unusual letter from an organization linked to the Egyptian intelligence service. The letter asked the bank to, quote, kindly withdraw nearly $10 million from the organization's account. Withdraw it all in cash, as in grain bills. Quote, inside the state-run National Bank of Egypt, employees were soon busy placing bundles of $100 bills into two large bags. 4 men arrived and carried away the bags, which weighed a combined 200 pounds. The bags contained what was then a sizable share of Egypt's entire reserve of American currency. But when those 4 men came and carried away those hundreds of pounds of cash, bundles of $100 bills, where did the cash go? What could Egypt's intelligence service possibly need with 200 pounds of $100 bills? Well, FBI agents in the United States thought that cash might have gone to Donald Trump. Explosive reporting from Aaron Davis and Carol Leonnig at the Washington Post on Friday revealed a years-long criminal investigation into whether Egypt illegally funneled $10 million in cash to Donald Trump for his 2016 campaign. 2 years into Trump's presidency, federal investigators in the United States had come to know the following things. First, classified U.S. intelligence had indicated that Egypt's president at least wanted to give Trump $10 million to boost his presidential campaign in 2016. Also, in September 2016, just before the election, candidate Trump did have a very chummy meeting with Egypt's president in New York, after which Trump praised him as a, quote, fantastic guy. A few weeks after that meeting, just before the election, look at the time on this, October 28th, just before the 2016 election, Trump miraculously produced $10 million of his own money to dump into his campaign, which at the time was quite strapped for cash. That $10 million infusion, though, wasn't a gift from Trump to his campaign. It was structured as a loan, so Trump would get the money back. Trump, just a few days later, won the election, and then just a few days after that, or a few days before his inauguration, there was that unexplained cash withdrawal of American dollars by the Egyptian intelligence service from a Cairo bank, $10 million, the same amount that Egypt's president had reportedly wanted to give Trump, according to U.S. intelligence, the same amount that Trump had miraculously found to loan to his own campaign. Egypt's president then inexplicably became one of Trump's first guests at the White House as president. Trump later released over $1 billion in military aid for Egypt. Trump at one point even called the Egyptian leader, quote, my favorite dictator. And for him, there's a lot of competition for that title. But U.S. investigators didn't ever prove that the money from Egypt, that cash from that Egyptian bank, went to Trump. To prove or disprove that, they would need access to more of Trump's financial records. But they would never get that access. And that is its own scandal. Carol Leonnig and Aaron Davis reporting that Trump's Attorney General Bill Barr stepped in to make sure that FBI agents wouldn't be allowed to subpoena Trump's financial records. He also then removed the U.S. attorney who was overseeing the investigation, and then he removed her replacement as well, until he finally got a U.S. attorney in that jurisdiction who would shut down the investigation entirely. Now, what investigators thought might have gone down here, an illegal $10 million cash payment to a presidential campaign from a foreign dictator, I mean, if that were ever proven, that would be one of the biggest presidential scandals in American history, if not the biggest. That said, it hasn't been proven. And Donald Trump has denied it. The reason it hasn't been proven is because nobody was allowed to look at the evidence that would prove it or disprove it. Thank you, Bill Barr. Thank you, U.S. Justice Department, for never apparently looking into any of the things that Bill Barr did as Attorney General to bring grave shame and discredit upon the U.S. Justice Department. That's a story for another day. I will say, though, Trump is denying the implications of this reporting and this investigation. He could easily disprove the claims here himself by simply allowing his banks to release his financial records to show that he has nothing to hide because he had nothing to do with this. in a hard-fought presidential campaign, you might think that would become a political pressure point for Donald Trump. I mean, if you're going to tell people they need to release their long-form birth certificates, seems like maybe you ought to release your bank records, especially when you're credibly accused of potentially taking a $10 million cash bribe from your favorite dictator. Joining us now is Washington Post national investigative reporter Carol Leonnig. Carol, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Of course, Rachel.
Did I misconstrue any of that? Did I get any of that the wrong way around?
No, you got every part of it right, and especially the chronology. I like the way you tell it because it's very clear. People who had credible information from the CIA, jaw-dropping intelligence. The CIA was warning the Department of Justice, we have an informant and additional corroborating intelligence streams suggesting that Egypt's president wanted to get $10 million to Donald Trump. The DOJ began investigating largely under then special counsel, independent special counsel Robert Mueller. And then when they actually found corroborating evidence of $10 million walking out the door of a Cairo bank, just as the intelligence foretold through the account of the Egyptian spy agency, the General Intelligence Agency, when they found that incredibly and compelling evidence, they were barred from trying to figure out whether any of that money ended up in any of Donald Trump's personal or business accounts.
What would the scope be? How big a proverbial subpoena would it need to be in order for investigators to get the kinds of records that would prove or disprove these implications?
The subpoena that was drafted and proposed in April of 2019 by the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C., and again proposed in June of 2019, and again proposed in the fall of 2019, was fairly limited. It basically asked for records around the time of this bizarre cash withdrawal in Egypt, January 15, 2017, a few weeks before and several weeks after. It was not a very broad amount of time. It was scoped down and careful, but they could not get the U.S. Attorney's approval for that. After she met with Attorney General Bill Barr, she decided that they didn't have the factual basis or the predicate to seek the records of the sitting president. And just so you know, Rachel, if you walked into the FBI field office today and said you believed you had information about me laundering money or taking money illegally, the FBI could get a subpoena for my bank records in about 10 minutes. It wouldn't take very long. In this case, this group was blocked for 2 years from gathering any evidence.
Carol, what would you, and just your reporter's take on this from what you understand and the sources that you spoke with, how would you describe the confidence level of the investigators who thought that this $10 million might have gone from Egypt to Donald Trump? I mean, the Trump appointees of the Justice Department who ultimately shut this thing down and didn't let them investigate it, they sort of made it seem like these folks were looking for evidence for some cockamamie theory. But the people who spoke to you, who were involved in the investigation, how did they characterize their level of confidence or suspicion that something really was truly wrong here?
The sources we spoke to who were very close to the probe described a group of agents, FBI agents and prosecutors who were gobsmacked that they had found this level of information. First, the intelligence was pretty stunning and came from a reliable source who had provided reliable information in the past in this field. Then they had a document that proved a movement of $10 million from exactly the intelligence agency that was suspected in the intelligence to have been the source of the funds in the exact dollar figure. Then they had Donald Trump basically flipping the switch on all of this U.S. policy on Egypt in a way that was extremely beneficial to the president of Egypt. The first meeting that was ever held with the new U.S. president was with the Egyptian president. A pretty big kiss, if you will, to that country that we had held at arm's length. These investigators and agents were described to us as stunned because they had never gathered this quality of investigation in a money laundering or financial conspiracy case before. certainly not one that had been closed down.